To all those here, and to them especially, Greta Thunberg is a force of difference, empowered by her own. Anne Bolding King and her son Baxter have autism too.
She's doing something that's very, very hard, speaking in front of all these people and doing all the things that she's doing, and it's incredibly important.
The 16-year-old environmental activist calls her autism her superpower, the fuel behind her stark, searing tirade against climate change. She's a girl creating a storm, not in spite of her disability, but she says because of it.
I have Asperger's. I'm on the autism spectrum. In some circumstances, it can definitely be an advantage, and especially in such a big crisis like this, when we need to think outside the box. We need to think outside our current system, that we need people who think outside the box and who aren't like everyone else.
And there's nothing typical about Greta. Staging school protests, setting off across the Atlantic in a zero-carbon yacht, berating world leaders without blinking.
You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words. How dare you?
Her message is singular, blistering.
People are suffering. People are dying. Entire ecosystems are collapsing.
And like most people on the autism spectrum, her honesty is glaring.
She's a hero. She's a hero for climate change. I mean, these issues have been around for decades, but people have not been listening. There's something about the way that she delivers her message that gets people to listen. And I think it's because she's doing it autistically. She's doing it in a very forthright and honest way.
We demand a safe future.
Greta's unwavering voice rises above the noise, says Anne, because it is so rational, so black and white, so hard to ignore.
I think it's great because I've never heard of anyone being autistic who's famous. First person who's autistic in my generation who's become famous.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Greta has become a sort of neurodiversity rock star. But while her autism is being celebrated, it's also being ridiculed.
And a mentally ill Swedish child.
Describing her as unstable is unfair.
But she is unstable.
She's been dismissed as unhinged, an unwitting pawn, her rage mocked by the U.S. president, a jibe Greta turned around by adopting Trump's words as her own and posting them on her Twitter bio.
Her inability to abide hypocrisy and her willingness to speak the blunt truth.
Steve Silberman has written about the history and legacy of autism. He says Greta's lack of guile is a weapon against her haters.
The level at which she's being attacked is really disturbing, but it's also just kind of immature and childish, really, the attacks leveled against her. And so she comes off as the only adult in the room when the President of the United States comes off like a petulant child who won't admit that science is true.
Welcome to The Daily Show.
Thank you so much.
What is the biggest thing that has stuck out to you in New York City?
Greta is incredibly poised, and that alone is huge.
All the impressions, everything is so much, so big, so loud, and
that's not a joke. People with autism tend to be extremely sensitive to sensory overload, crave routine and quiet, need to know what happens next.
For her to give interview after interview, to travel, to be in unfamiliar settings, to have her routines constantly disrupted, because one of the most important things to maintain the sort of serenity, really, of an autistic person's life is for them to maintain a predictable routine and to not be surprised by sort of breaking events. And I really wish her luck and strength.
It just feels great, doesn't it?
Greta's an awesome person. She really is. We just saw her and a lot of other amazing people speak, and it's just been a really incredible day.
Incredible, inspiring, all the more so, they say, because she's making a difference simply by being herself. Joanna Rumeliotis, CBC News, Toronto.